He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Lauren Norris.
I was straight up thrown out of the game. This little lady, probably, 4.5 feet tall, came to me, put her waggy finger in my face, and she said, "You, sir, you're gonna have to leave." And I was escorted out of the court. Probably not the first time, but it was the most memorable time, and that's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned. You're going to want to be a part of this conversation because you probably already are.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J. Lauren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and it really does fascinate me how often the heckler's veto has the power to change the world. I mean, let's just take the last couple of football games, and I don't care what team you're a fan of. It has been the meme world icing on the cake for the last 10 days. Well, maybe longer than that, but most especially in the last 10 days. There's a Facebook meme right now about a ref throwing his hat in the end zone where the receiver steps on the hat. Well, there's no reason for the hat to be in the end zone, right? Unless he thought there was some kind of foul that was so egregious a flag wasn't appropriate. But he threw his hat in the end zone, and the player stepped on the hat, lost his footing, and couldn't catch the ball. Okay, when we talk about things like elections, putting your thumb on the scale of one side or the other, that's an egregious interaction that betrays justice. Throwing your hat in the field where someone's about to step, that's an egregious act of injustice. And when we see that from our toddlers playing football or basketball or soccer or whatever you want to inject in there, all the way up to our international involvement in foreign wars, everywhere along the spectrum, we have to ask the same question, and that is, as a leader, as an influencer, as a voice of reason into the life of people who look to me for guidance and direction, at what point do I say, just get over it? And acknowledge honestly, it wouldn't have made a big difference in the outcome. That football field, that hat, it's 100 yards long, the field, plus the end zones, plus it's 50 yards wide. The hat could have been thrown anywhere. The odds that it lands in that spot, purely circumstantial. The odds that it would cause the receiver to fall down, purely circumstantial. The odds that that touchdown or no touchdown would change the game, change the win-lose record of the season, change the playoffs or no playoffs, change the chance, that maybe that player has a torn ACL or a ruptured Achilles as a result of that. See, those are the little places where we have to ask ourselves as leaders, if I say nothing, if I tell him, just get over it. It's coincidental. It's not that big a deal. You should have played well enough that the ref's decisions couldn't have made an impact. Oh, I've heard all of those. I've even heard, what difference does it really make at this point? And here's the question that I have to ask. At some point, there's a balance that tips where those that are counting on you to speak up for them lose faith in you. And I don't care if you're the coach or you're the business leader, if you're the sales manager, if you're the parent. Dante had a very powerful quote who said something along the lines of, the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who in times of moral failure do nothing. Another great writer said, to do nothing is to do something. To say nothing speaks volumes. As a leader, if you're not willing to stick your neck out, to stick your reputation out. I remember being asked to leave the basketball court, to sit in the hallway. Why? Because I have a big voice. And when I saw things on the court, when my kids were playing basketball, and they were little, they were under the age of 10. But I would see them get shoved down, get an elbow to the back of the head, get penalties called when they were completely across the court from anybody. They couldn't touch anybody at the time. And to see them get called for things, to get cheated out of things, to get the buzzer or a whistle blown just in the nick of time to stop a score. And did the refs have the intention of corrupting the game? I don't know. I don't know if that was their intent or not. I just know that they didn't appear to me to have the best interest of everyone at heart. And no, I don't just yell on behalf of my kids or my grandkids. I yell when I see an injustice on either side. I do. And I get very loud. And I have a very big voice. And it can be heard all the way across the field, all the way across the court. And in a tiny little basketball court that was literally a single court in this gym, my voice really stood out. And so it didn't matter which team got fouled. If I didn't see the foul, if I thought it was inappropriate, I would say something about it. And they finally said, we don't even keep score with these teams. So your offensive resilience to the job of the refs, that's not fair. And we're asking you to leave. And they literally kicked me out for the rest of the season. Now, I don't know if my absence or presence made any difference to the refs or the other teams, if it made the world so much more peaceful that I had nothing to say. But I can tell you this, my son came to me and said, I know what you were trying to do, Dad. Thanks. See, there's a place where your willingness to comply just because you're told to shh, you're disruptive. You're causing a problem. Say nothing. There's a place where it's not a hill worth dying on. I can watch the process go. I can witness the injustices, as small or as large as they may be. And there's a place where saying nothing is perfectly okay. There's a place where saying nothing is actually advantageous because maybe they don't realize that you saw. Maybe they don't know that you witnessed their abuse, their foul use, their injustices. And they think, we got away with it. We get to do whatever we want to because nobody's going to stop us. Nobody can stop us. No, what are they going to do about it? What difference does it make at this point anyway? And something in the back of the mind of those who make those kinds of decisions, and I'm not just talking about little league referees, I'm talking about those people who refuse to hear a court hearing, not because the case is unjust, not because the case is wrong, But because they've already decided what the outcome of the case would be, and it's not in their favor, so it makes more sense to not let it go to court so that it never makes it to the media and it is never seen by the public and nobody ever sees it. And so nothing ever happened here. There was nothing. There was no case. It's easier to say you have no grounds for this case, or you have no place in this case, or you have no standing. Yeah, that's a key phrase. You have no standing in this. The plaintiff has no standing in this case is not a judgment as to the guilt or innocence of those being charged or accused, those who allegedly did something wrong. To say that the plaintiff has no standing is not to say that the accused is innocent. Those have nothing to do with each other. Now, it may be true that the plaintiff has no standing, that they're speaking up on behalf of someone else who's been injured, insulted, and mistreated, abused, someone else who's been the victim of injustice. But the plaintiff who actually came forward and went, hold on, that's not right. It shouldn't be like that. See, in that moment, sometimes that plaintiff gets what I got. And what they never said was, you were right, we called the foul incorrectly. What they never said was, you were right, we shouldn't mistreat the children that way. What they never said was, the referee made a mistake. No. They just took the loudest voice in the room that objected to the referee's behavior and threw him out. When the court says the plaintiff has no standing, that's the same thing. And it happens on a regular basis at courts of all levels, from the local city all the way up to our national courts. Our federal judges have been playing the same kind of game. I'm not going to ask whether or not there's innocence or guilt. I'm not going to ask whether or not there was justice or injustice. I'm not going to ask whether or not there are actual details in this case that should be revealed for the world to decide. I'm simply going to say, I'm not going to hear it. Now, as a parent, you could do the same thing. If your children have this little sibling rivalry thing going on, you could easily say, I don't want to talk to the hand. No, don't get me in the middle of this argument. A lot like an aunt or an uncle might do at Thanksgiving when you're talking about politics. I don't want to hear it. Well, why don't you want to hear it? Well, because you might change my mind. Oh. But see, here's what really happens on the second and third level. And that is, those for whom you might have been a voice, those who trust you, who need your voice for guidance and direction, those people, when you say nothing, they see cowardice. When you say nothing, they see injustice perpetuated. When you say nothing, they realize there's nobody on our side. There's nobody who will stand up for us. There's no one who will fight for us. There's no one to protest on our behalf. Now, if you're a leader, that's a failure of leadership. And I don't care if you're talking about your elementary age kids playing in sports, or you're talking about your high school students who are losing on a grade, or you're talking about a petition to enter a college, or you're talking about a job interview or a job dismissal. I don't care if you're talking about a loss of a sale because someone else manipulated the system or the process. I don't care if you're talking about how you're treated after a storm. Those who don't have the leverage to have a voice, those who don't have the power, the influence, the circle, the environment, they don't have access to the arena to walk into the boss's office and go, hang on, what happened here? How come third shift got a raise and second shift got nothing? Auspiciously, that's what unions were created for, was to make sure that everybody was treated fairly, that men and women worked and got paid for the work that they did, that they were treated fairly with lunch breaks and time off and access to restrooms. Brilliant, what was the name of that movie? There's a brilliant scene in the movie where the rocket scientist, forgive me, I can't remember her name, the actress or the character, that she was playing, but she was the rocket scientist who discovered that the return to Earth had a problem. And she was late for a meeting one day, and the boss is like, "What takes you so long to go to the bathroom?" She said, "I'm colored. I can't use the bathroom in this building, so I have to run almost a mile to the colored bathroom to be able to do it." That, my friend, is injustice. That should not happen. The fact that it had to go all the way to her boss for somebody to go, "What are we doing? This is wrong. Why is it happening like this?" And that he had to speak up and go, "No, that changes today. I have the authority to change that today. I have the right to change that today." Had he remained silent, what would have happened? When I talk about leaders being willing to fight in every arena, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You may not have the realm of influence of a political office. Maybe you don't sit on the city council or the mayor's office. Maybe you're not in state government or federal government. Maybe you've never been elected to office at all, but you play golf with the guys or the gals that have been. Maybe you don't own the company, but you have lunch on a regular basis with the person who does. Maybe those are not your decisions to make, but your opinion matters to the decision maker. In the moment that you see that injustice is happening and you remain silent, that's failed leadership, my friend. Your time to fight is now. Your time to stand up for justice is now. Is it racial injustice? Is it religious discrimination? Is it the lack of diversity in your organization where you know things could change, but you don't want to push the apple cart over for fear that you'll lose your applesauce? You're not willing to be thrown out of the game. It's too big a risk for you. You'd rather sit and watch your kids play or play on your phone while your kids are playing than to be asked to leave the court because you spoke up about what you believe to be true. When I watch a head coach in the NFL, whatever team, throw that red challenge flag, what I realize is, and sometimes I realize it's a tactical way of getting a breather, getting a little bit of a timeout. That Matthew Stafford, the Lions against the Browns, this has been a couple of years ago. He had that shoulder injury on a play. I mean, he got lambasted, flattened on the field. And the other team called a timeout when Dante Culpepper was going to come in for Stafford. The other team, the Browns, they called the timeout. And Culpepper came on the field, but because of the timeout, Stafford was able to catch his breath and come back on the field. See, if a player's injured and it causes a delay, they have to leave it for at least one play or a timeout. But his team didn't have to take a timeout. The other team did, and the other team created a reprieve. I know sometimes that challenge flag is used in the place of a timeout. It's used to say, hang on, let's just look at this. But let me tell you something else it is. When the defender or the runner or the receiver has been unjustly treated, and the coach holds that challenge flag as the opportunity to be the megaphone voice to go, hold on, wait a minute, that wasn't just, that wasn't right. I'm not going to stand for it. The spot that you put that ball, the way that that play came out, the decision that you made here, no, I don't agree with it, and I'm going to fight for my player. That's what that red challenge flag represents. It represents that leader willing to say, this could cost me a timeout if I don't win. Even if I win the challenge, it doesn't necessarily mean a change in the outcome of the game. But what it does mean is that that coach has said to his team, I'm on your side and I'm fighting for you with everything that I've got. And sometimes you'll see that the refs will say, you're right, we called it wrong, we got to overturn that. It's a slim chance. And part of the reason is that no judge, no referee, no business owner, nobody wants to go back on a decision they've made and go, yeah, I screwed that up, because it's a pride thing, it's an ego thing. But for the leader who's not willing to throw the challenge flag, for the leader who's not willing to stand up and go, hang on, I saw an injustice there. For the ones who are not willing to say, that was wrong. They're weak leaders. And they're damaging the loyalty relationship between themselves and those for whom their voice should be cast. Right? You should be standing on the side of those who are trusting in you, who are counting on you. You should be speaking up for them. You should be saying that's not right when it's not right. You should be applauding them and encouraging them and speaking to the world on their behalf when they do well, when they make great decisions, when they succeed in something. You should be pointing it out. Look what they did. And you should also be honest when they mess it up, when they fail, when they screw up, when they make the mistake, when the team, when the people who are following you commit an injustice. You should speak up. You might remember the scandal of one of the teams a few years back in the NFL. They were actually paying extra money to their defensive players who would actually injure a quarterback or a running back on the other team. Bounties. They would pay extra money, a little bonus on the side, a little something for a little extra violence. That's wrong. That's injustice. That's corruption. And their coach paid a heavy price for it. And their team paid a heavy price for it. And there were a lot of penalties to be paid for it. Here's the question. Where was the leadership when this notion came up? When the idea came up, hey, this is what we're going to do. I mean, how many people were injured, career-ending injuries, because this notion got out of the locker room, for heaven's sake? I mean, whose voice was silenced to go, we're not doing that. That's the meanest, dumbest thing I've ever heard. No, I'm not going to have any part in it. That should have happened at the table where it came up. Somebody in leadership should have said, no, we're not doing that. I won't sign that check. That's a dumb idea. You should be fired for thinking of it. That's where leadership should have spoken up. To fight for your people before they can make a stupid mistake, before they can injure somebody else, before they can commit the injustice. You've got to be able to speak into their life in the same way that you would into the life of someone else who's causing injustice into the lives. If your child is playing improperly on the field, if your child is getting an advantage by cheating, if your child is taking advantage of others, speak up on that too. Fight for them in that way too. Sometimes that means to stand in their way. Sometimes fighting for your toddler looks like yelling at them, no, don't run in front of the car in the street. That's crazy. That's dangerous. It's going to get you killed. Sometimes fighting for them looks like that. Sometimes fighting for them looks like, I'm not sending my people into battle right now. It's a no-win situation. Sometimes fighting for them looks like, I'm not voting on that proposition. Go back and rewrite it again. There's nothing good in there. Your idea is bad. I don't care who it pleases. It's destructive. It's damaging. I'm not up for that. Now realize there will be times that you stand up for what's right. You speak up for the truth, and the result is you get thrown out of the game. You get asked to leave the court. See, it was only a couple of years later that I decided if they're not going to give me a voice as a spectator, I'll coach. And I did. And I know nobody kept score, but we did. The boys did. And I know nobody had any idea what the win-loss record was, because in this league we don't keep score and we don't keep win-loss records, but I did. And at the end of the year we were 10-1 because we had a couple of really weird plays. I would yell from the sideline as loud as I could, blitzkrieg, blitzkrieg, blitzkrieg. Well, everybody knows what that means. And all the kids would take 5 steps forward and then stop in their tracks. And the other team would freak out because they didn't know what it meant. And they would throw the ball. Or they would panic and drop the ball. Or they would all fall down. They didn't have any idea what our strategy was. There was nothing corrupt about our strategy. It was just a little bit of a mind game. And the other coaches came to me later and said, yeah, that's kind of mean, but kind of genius at the same time. And I'm like, why is it mean? They're like, well, you're implying that you're going to do something ferocious and, that scares the kids. I'm like, how many of those kids know German? They only know what that means because you told them what you think it means. It's a different kind of a problem. And that's not my problem. It's a leadership problem, but it's on your side of the ball. So I wonder how many times, how often, is there an opportunity for us as a leader to speak our mind? And we don't because it's inconvenient. To us, it might cost me something. I might get thrown out of the game. I might have to do a little extra work to speak up. I might have to change my cell phone company because my ideals, my belief system, my opinions, my way of understanding the world doesn't concur with where the company spends its money that I'm giving my monthly bill to. Maybe a place of business that's my favorite place to eat or my favorite place to drink a hot beverage. Maybe their worldview or the way they treat their employees or the way they present themselves to the world are completely different than my ideas and opinions. The way to speak up there is to take my dollars elsewhere. If you don't like what that organization supports, believes, does, causes, contributes to around the world, then take that hot beverage money to another hot beverage buying place. It's just a thought. If you don't agree with what they do, don't support what they do. Don't give them the money. Sometimes what you have to do is simply speak up, raise your hand, throw the red flag, and go, hold up, I just can't sit well with that. And you might already know in the back of your mind that your protestation is going nowhere. You will actually never win that argument. There are times that that's absolutely true. And there are times that your willingness to voice your opinion, to not remain silent, has more value in the courage, the tenacity, the bond, the loyalty of those you lead than it does in actually bringing about change. But I'll tell you, when your team is united because they believe you're on their side, when your team has a bond together that says we're in this together, I'm fighting for you and not against you. I see your challenges and I will put myself in harm's way to make sure that you have every advantage possible. That team fights longer. That team fights stronger. That team has a deeper bond, whatever it is, whatever the issue is. And if you're willing to put your voice on the line, you can make a huge change. And finally, you can fight with your vote. If you're sitting on your couch wondering why the world is in the condition that it's in and you're doing nothing on election day, again, I don't care if you're voting for your local dog catcher or you're voting for the President of the United States. Understand that we are in a place right now where there are people who have bought off the refs, so to speak. There are people who are not elected officials who make more decisions about your life every day than you make about your own life every day. I know you think that's a grand exaggeration. It just means you haven't done your homework. There are people who don't even live in this country who decide how much your gas prices will be. True story. And whether or not your dollar will buy the same thing that it bought a week ago. True story. They don't live in this country. They've never been elected to power in this country. But because they have a lot of money, they're buying off the refs. They're buying off the elected officials. I heard someone say, you can't necessarily buy politics, but you can rent a senator pretty cheap. You realize that many of the decisions about whether money goes to a little place in the southeast of the United States or a little place in the southeast of Europe, that multi-billion-dollar decision, those decisions are usually one or two votes. And the one or two votes are often decided by people who have their hand out going, who's going to put more money in my pocket? Who's going to give me greater opportunity when I'm done with this election selection process? Who's going to make my life better? And there are plenty of foreign influencers who will buy off our elected officials. It's time for you to vote for people who can't be bought off. Your voice matters where you spend your dollar. Your voice matters when you speak up against injustice, even if you know that your voice is not going to make a change in the injustice, but is going to build unity in your team. That's a voice worth speaking out. Throw the red challenge flag, even if you know you're going to lose the call. Speak up for your team because they need it. And fight with your vote. You've got to get off the couch. You've got to take 5 or 10 people to the polls with you. I'm not telling you how to vote. I don't care how you vote. Here's what I care about. If you're silent, your opinion doesn't matter. I don't care what you think if you're not willing to get up off the couch and say it to the rest of the world. Get into the ballot box. Vote for what you believe to be right, what you believe to be true. Throw that challenge flag. So fight with your dollars, fight with your voice, and fight with your vote, or shut up. Because you're not a leader if you're not willing to stand up and speak up for those that you lead in those 3 ways. Anything else is cowardice. I'm Jay Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Lauren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Lauren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Lauren will serve you well.
Thank you.